see the Lions, we drafted, we got 2 first-round picks, we got a couple second-round picks. Do you think it really is important for players to earn their spot and not just be given? Like a Jack Campbell, we drafted 18, or Jahmyr Gibbs. These guys got to earn their spot. Obviously, you're a rookie. You've been a veteran. Do you really do agree with that idea? These guys got to earn their spot. I don't care where you're drafted. To be on the field, you got to make sure you get it done first.
Well, it works two ways, right? So when you pick up a draft pick early in the draft, or you put them in a position where they're supposed to make a difference or have an impact that first year, you pick them with a big pick, so they are going to play, right? So you're not going to be some players that you're going to set on the side and maybe they got to earn their position like most of the guys traditionally have to do in camp. They're going to be preparing them to get ready to make contributions. So when you talk about Gibbs and you talk about bringing in a big linebacker, and then you're bringing in a tight end, you're bringing in some other, defensive players who are replacing other defensive secondary players. All of a sudden now you're plugging in players and you're trying to get them ready because you see that they fill a gap. So when you talk about Jack Campbell and you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, these are guys that are going to play. I mean, they have a position. I don't see them having to really compete that much. The only way I see them sitting out and not getting the reps is because the coaches are trying to bring them along a certain path. But right now, the Lions are going to come out, and I think they're going to throw everything and every talented player or contributing player that they have to the table. They're going to give them an opportunity to make that difference. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to step back for 1 second. I always say this. You can draft the best players. You can draft the right positions, the right everything. But all the teams are feeling like they made the right picks. Now it's about which coaches are going to prepare those players, which players are going to come in with the right mindset and pick up on those offensive and defensive schemes, which ones are going to get along with their teammates, which teammates are going to be willing to be team players and work with those players to work within the scheme. Because remember, they're there to take somebody's job. And there's these other dynamics that come to play, and we can all be, smiles and giggles when we look at the draft and we look at the excitement about the season. But there is so much that's happening behind the scenes that's going to determine whether or not those players actually succeed, and if they fit, and if they're accepted, and if they can, meet the coaches and the organization's expectations and stay healthy. So everything is kind of not a hypothetical, but it's always fun to be looking at it the way we're looking at it now, and to kind of make these guesses about whether or not this team is going to be a good team and whether or not players are going to actually earn that deserved spot that they were picked at, and all that other good stuff. So, you and I, we're going to have our debates and our battles all year, I'm sure, because I've been listening to the show on the first half hour, and I've heard a lot of people talk about different players and which players they think should be better, especially on the defensive side. Offensively, I think there's still going to be some other battles as well.
Oh, definitely going to be battles. A lot of battles, a lot of fun. That's why you got to subscribe to Lions Nation United. We're doing this all year round, Herm. Why should these people subscribe? I think we got a lot of good reasons on here.
One, because this is a place to be. This is a place that the fans, I say this every year, they come in, they can make this channel be what it needs to be. You're doing a tremendous job of serving up content and really being the lead content provider and host of everything that we do. But then also, even this year, I'm bringing out a couple of new things to just kind of, I don't have my hair now, but I'm letting my hair down a little bit. I'm gonna open it up just a little bit more. So there may be some back and forth with myself and some of the fan base, but at the same time, it's all love.
Absolutely all love. And we'll get back to training camp here. Lions, we're booty cheeks a little bit last year in the secondary. What do they do? What? All right. So in the offseason, they're like, you know what? We're going to fix this thing. They get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cameron Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley, Brian Branch, and draft. Really put a lot of talent in that secondary. OTAs and minicamp, Jared Goff struggling a little bit, and there's a good offense. Do you think that this trend continues? Lions defense, these talented players are able to continue to thrive and maybe, lead the way for the Lions this year?
I think you will. There were some really good pickups there. You talk about I look at the secondary, right? So you talk about Kirby Joseph. This is a player that came in, made some phenomenal plays, got a lot of respect across the NFL. Tracy Walker, another player that, has made some plays that people are looking at, as being a solid player. But how do you start to share that time, and how do you keep a certain chemistry of players out on the field? I don't think there's ever anything wrong with depth. And I think they've done a really good job of providing a lot of depth at a position that I think there were some concerns because there was youth and there was a unit that hadn't played together for a long time. But now you start bringing in a mixture of veterans with players who've already understand the system and worked with this coaching staff. But also you start to fill those gaps and those holes. You can rotate players now, and you can bring guys in and apply even more pressure and bring in special packages that the other offensive unit is not going to see coming. And then it's going to be harder to scout. I'll tell you this, as a wide receiver, it's really hard to scout a team that has a lot of depth at a certain position, especially if I'm a receiver and there's a lot of depth at the secondary, because there's so many schemes and there's so many players that they can bring in and so many combinations of things that they can do with coverage that can throw you off, because you can't scout everyone. I mean, it's impossible to do that. So you try and scout one or two players, and you try and scout systems when you're an offensive unit. But when you get a team that has depth, I think that can also become an asset for a lot of teams.
I look at the Lions last year. We win 9 wins. All right. I think the Lions can progress to get to 11. Tina Marie of Passarelli says, how many games do you think the Lions are going to win this season, and how many losses? I don't want to throw that prediction on you, but do you think that the Detroit Lions can improve from 9 wins after all the talent in the draft and free agency?
I think they can. And even though the schedule, it has some challenges in there, but I think in the NFC North, the division gets a little bit easier. It's a little bit more predictable in terms of what you get. And when you're playing certain ones, you understand the weaknesses and the strengths of teams. I don't think anyone's going to catch anyone off guard. So the first and foremost, the Lions have to defend that piece. They have to win the NFC North. They have to go out and play really good football. They have to be dominant in that space. And then as they start to play outside of their division, they just got to split their road games. I mean, we always talk about this. If as a team, if you can split your road games and win 90% of your home games, then typically you win a division or you get a playoff run. And that's just kind of like setting the bar at a minimum. But there's expectation for this team, and I don't see any barriers right now that keeps them from making it. One, winning the NFC North, but two, having an opportunity at the playoffs. That means they have to win more than they won last year. They got to win at least 1, maybe 2 more games than they did last year to have that postseason play. And I think it's capable and doable. But the durability of this team, how well this offense can continue to play at the level of lights out like we saw them playing last year, you can't carry that over from one year to the next. It doesn't work that way. The Lions are going to have to come out and they have to play this year, and they're going to have to make sure that chemistry of players are working at the same way, that they're getting more out of certain skill position players. They got to expand the passing game to have a little bit more depth downfield. Who's going to take up that role? I don't know. Most of your players are possession style receivers, whether it be in the St. Brown, who's really more of a possessive style receiver, to where you start to get the guys that go down to the middle levels, but no one's really attacking that deep third. And you're not going to have your guy that you expected to do that in the first part of the season. So there's some challenges offensively that I see that I don't know necessarily was addressed because you're swapping out running backs. Yeah, you're swapping out running backs, but you look at it from a statistical standpoint, you had one guy who had 15 touchdowns, right? So you got to swap that out with an incoming guy in Gibbs, right? And to say that he automatically is going to make up that piece, I don't think you can go to bank on that. That's still got to be earned.
You talked about lights out. Now, as this NFL season's coming here, Karen Rodgers leaves the NFC North, and he did his dark out retreat. As we prepare for this season, do you think it's vital for you to do a dark room retreat, have the lights out?
Man, you guys got to leave that guy alone, man. He's trying to go and hang out in New York, man. He's trying to go hang out at basketball games and just have fun, and I'm going to leave it there. I'll wait till the season starts before I start going in hard on people. Listen, man, sure. I always tell people like this. Let's go to another part of this, right? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give this one to those that are listening. And I appreciate everyone jumping on the channel. I used to watch epic battles like Deion Sanders would go against Michael Irvin, or he'd go against Jerry Rice, right? You got 2 really good, you got Hall of Famers, you got these great players. just because one was an All-Pro or Hall of Famer, the other one could win. When you look at the other players we have on the Lions, and you look at players against the other team, they're going to have games where they're not going to match up well. They're going to be games they match up really well, and then players are still not going to be able to shut down or stop the other team, and vice versa. My concern becomes more of, will the Lions, when they have the opportunity to dominate, will they dominate? And then when there's opportunity to continue to dominate because they have a lesser opponent, will they become complacent, or will they continue to dominate? That's the character of your team. And then when you are the underdog and when you don't have that ability and you get knocked down, how does that team respond? I mean, I think most of us will say that the Lions will pick up and go after it. But I say, you don't know until you see it. You got some different players in key positions that are going to have to step up to the mindset and the aggressiveness and that dog that we saw the Lions start to develop. They got to adapt that right now and come in with that same mentality. So it's going to be interesting. It's every Lion fan has the right to be as excited as they are. I think the team should be very excited. But speaking as a player and anyone who has done this, it resets. I hate to say that, but it always resets. You have to go in and you have to still play the games.
100%. And we've seen teams that won Super Bowls and they have that hangover. Even though they're an elite team, it just happens, and we've seen it 100 times. We know how important the wide receiver position is. You're a former player, but I want to know your thoughts on the tight end position. We get Sam LaPorta, high tight end in the draft in the second round. We got Brock Wright. We got some players that can get it done. How important is the tight end to our scheme with Jared Goff and what they bring to our offense?
It's an interesting position because you lose Hawkinson, you get Wright, who steps in, and he's doing a fairly decent job of kind of just filling in that gap. I think the Lions did a really good job offensively, calling plays that really maximize what he could bring. They didn't ask him or make it to where he had to make or break the offensive output or keep the chains moving. But when you look at LaPorta, and I had an opportunity to scout him and look at a lot of his film, I see something that may be a little bit of a surprise. I think he may be a little bit of a surprise because he has the physical attributes of a tight end, but he plays almost like what we liked in Hawkinson, and that was he had that receiverist type ability, right? He could go in, he could work down the field, he could work off the line. I see him a lot in the play action, and I think the reason why the Lions really looked at LaPorta was, he did a lot in college off of the play action, and he did a lot on backside tight end plays or screens back to the tight end. And the Lions are going to have so much attention placed on the running game that I think he's going to be able to sneak out and get out in the backside of plays. He's going to be able to be a part of the play action that the Lions have effectively started to master to make some really impactful plays for the offense. And I like his ability after he catches the ball, how he tries to make other things happen as a runner. And so when you get that, you get an aggressive offense. We know we're going to have that in the running game. We already know we have that and guys like St. Brown and Raymond and those guys. So I think that as they continue to move, this is going to be a team that you're going to have to tackle their skilled players.
100%. It's just a nightmare, I think, for defenses. This offense was really good last year. I think it's going to be better this year. Now, this is one reason why y'all need to subscribe to the channel. Because Tina Maria says, Herman, my question to you is there any way I can get signed football by you and put it in my collection of Detroit Lions memorabilia? We're going to be doing some giveaways here soon on Lions Nation Unite. Tell the folks why they should subscribe because of these giveaways coming up.
Oh, definitely should subscribe. So there's going to be a new thing that I'll be doing this season. I won't let too much of it out of the bag, but you're going to have to subscribe. You're going to need to be a member and also, follow and like things that we do because I'm going into my treasure chest of things. I actually found and forgot that I had multiple storage units, not one, multiple, filled with memorabilia, filled with little relics and things that I ended up just for some odd reason, I held on to them, but I didn't know about them then. So why not share them now? So I'm going to be giving out some really cool stuff, some limited edition items. Definitely for those of you who need things signed that perhaps of mine that you want to put into your collection, because you got to have a Herman Moore thing in your collection. I'm going to be available to be able to do that, and I'm wanting to engage you more on that level. So definitely, let's get it ready. We're going to be giving away some really cool stuff, and you just don't want to miss it. It's going to be really, really cool. I'm not going to, again, I'm going to tease you a little bit with it, but some really, really cool stuff that I found that I'm willing to part with.
It is cool. It is cool. I'm not going to say anything. All I know is really cool. And so make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you become a member, just like Will and Sprague just did here. Just became a member to Lions Nation Unite. We really appreciate it, supporting the channel and what we are doing here for the Lions. Lisa's got a question here. #Lions. We have 4 great tight ends on the team. Do you think Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, will use more 2 tight end sets this year than we did last year?
I don't think they'll tighten down the offense because this offense needs to be more spread. You look at the elusiveness of the running backs. You look at the way this team really functions. Is they can spread out the defense and not make it more compact. They seem to be more effective. Now, the offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. They've continued to add some talent and some young talent to that. But I still see in them just, the one tight end set be primarily what they go with 2 running backs or 3 wide receivers. And then sometimes even going a 4 receiver spread. I wouldn't be surprised. But tight ends will be a vital piece, and they will be an important piece. And you're right, the depth there makes them very, very good and very dangerous.
We were at the draft, or we were at Soaring Casino for the draft, and one player we've talked about before the draft is Hendon Hooker. Question from Jorge here. Herman Moore's thoughts on Hendon Hooker getting reps during camp, even though he's going to have a redshirt season. Now, he's not going to be the starter. We know that. But what is your thoughts about him getting some sort of reps, if healthy? Hendon Hooker, we both love the guy.
I'll say this. Because of the high praises that were given for Hooker, I believe that they're not expecting him and hoping they don't need to play him. But I'd be very surprised if they don't get him in a position or place him. And it's not about whether the season gets away for the Lions or there's just, nothing to lose type deal. I see if something unfortunately happens to Jared Goff, they're gonna expedite his ability to get in there. Even if they have to go with a different quarterback in the interim, that's going to be someone I think they're going to be looking at to be the heir apparent to what's going to happen. So I think I wouldn't say that it's completely out of the play, but if Jared Goff goes down, I think there's a strong possibility that you start to see him play more. But he's got to be ready. So I don't think they'll just let it be just a redshirt year and whatever happens, happens.
Tina, if you're on Facebook for Lions Nation Unite, you're good to go from that aspect. You are already signed up. There's different platforms we use. You're on Facebook. You definitely are good to go already. Do you think we really need another wide receiver like most people are hoping? Now, DeAndre Hopkins just signed with the Tennessee Titans. I personally think we're good at the wide receiver position. I like the young guy who we drafted at round 7, Antoine Green. From you, great wide receiver. When you look at the depth at this team, do you think that the Lions should make a move, or do you think we're set right now?
I think we still are missing a piece at the wide receiver position. It depends on the scheme that you run. If you look at the offense that Ben Johnson has run over the years, you can get away with a possession style, closer knit team of receivers that are not stretching the field. You're not taking too many shots down the field. I think with Chark, he was a guy they were looking to kind of take up that mantle and start to become that deep threat. But now when you start looking at Antoine Green and you start looking at how does he contribute, this is a big play guy coming out of North Carolina, 18 yards or his average target that they're trying to get him the ball down the field. So he's used to that big play. I don't think that the Lions can avoid that. If you're going to go with just that possessive style receiving attack and you're just hitting the short passes and you're trying to work your way methodically down the field, that means you have to sustain drives. You have to be pristine. You have to be really, really good at moving the football and avoiding penalties and mistakes and things of that nature, long down and distances. Otherwise, you're going to put predictability on your running backs as well, and you're containing them, even though they're going to be part of the passing attack. But at some point, you got to be able to have a threat downfield. Otherwise, the defense tightens up on you, and you get too many people walking down and compressing the offense. So I would like to see them have a bigger play wide receiver, and I know everyone thinks that they have that already in play. I just don't know if I'm a true believer of it just yet. until I see it happening on a regular basis. But you got to have home run threats. You got to have big play receivers.
Gary Kessinger says, Herman, who was the hardest defensive back you've had to face in your career?
Out of just pure arrogance and
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
You know, I used to tell people, with the exception of my rookie year, I stopped paying attention to defensive backs. I started paying attention to defensive coordinators and schemes. Like, what will they do when I defeat and beat this first guy that they're trying to match me up with? Because that was me deciding and determining, how do I win? If I make you adjust your scheme, it's going to be more than just that one player, because you're not going to leave that one player on me and just let me defeat him. So I can't say it. I mean, I never really faced just that one guy. It was always a combination of it seemed like a receiver, a defensive back and a linebacker would always be looking at me as a wide receiver in some type of a combination. So they had the in and out on me. They did the high-low. You did the guy that forces you inside. So, you know, I didn't really pay attention. I knew about the guys. I knew about Dion. I knew about Rod Woodson. You know, you name them. I mean, I knew about Darryl Green. I faced those guys, but it wasn't really that type of a battle.